Greetings from IAS. We are discussing today a very important topic, and that is sexual harassment. It is a topic that is a taboo in many cultures, but today we have decided to address it because it is a reality. It is something that it is a problem all over the world, and we're going to look at some statistics today of what is happening around the world. It is something that doesn't happen only to women, it happens also to men. It doesn't happen only between two genders, but it can happen with people of the same sex. I have invited men from different parts of the world to help us understand what is happening. They are not experts in sexual harassment. They are not PhDs in psychology. They are only expressing their own opinions of what they have seen or heard in their own country. Before I introduce them to you, I want to let you know that whatever is said on this program does not engage IAS. They are personal opinions that come only from our participants. So let us meet them. I want them to introduce themselves. Please tell us your name, your country of origin, and what you are doing here at IAS. Let's start maybe on that side.
Yes, my name is Edgar Vesco. I am from Argentina. I am studying here PhD in education here at IAS.
Welcome, Edgar.
I am Emmanuel Taklov Jr. I am helping out with the Pathfinder Club, the children's choir, the teens choir, and the music committee in the church.
Okay, and where are you from?
I'm from the Philippines.
All right. Let's go to the next person.
Well, I'm Sam Gaikwad from India, teaching at IAS.
Very good.
Education department.
Welcome back to the program, Dr. Sam. And whenever we have Dr. Sam on the program, you can already guess what will happen. So we're very glad that you're here. You're back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Innocent Guizo from the Republic of Zimbabwe. I'm doing Old Testament studies in the seminary.
Okay. Welcome. And I think we have had you also once on the program. So welcome back. Let's start with the first question. How do you personally define sexual harassment? And I'm going to start with my brother here, Emmanuel Taklov.
Well, it's more of a sugar-coated, selfish, lustful, and indecent act.
Okay.
So it's just like, being macho among men when they do that to the women.
Okay. Let's try to find another definition, definitely, that is part of sexual harassment. Let's go to the next person.
In my opinion, is a sexual behavior which is unwanted. So there are two parts here. There is someone having some kind of sexual behavior. There is a second part who is really doesn't liking that situation.
Okay.
He's unwanting that situation.
Okay.
And there is not necessarily a difference of power between them.
Okay.
Maybe they are just in the same level of power of the opportunity to defend themselves, but anyway, it's an unwanted sexual behavior.
Okay. Let's go to Pastor Guizo, and then we'll come back to Dr. Sam.
Thank you. This is really difficult to explain.
Okay.
But I think we could also explain it as unwanted sexual advances by anybody. It could also be the use of sex to chase or to discipline somebody.
Okay.
If somebody is going to expose themselves and make you uncomfortable,
yes,
and you run away,
yes,
that is harassment,
yes,
in reverse.
Yes.
So it takes so many shades, inclusive of what we've highlighted. I'm just putting in another element, that the perpetrator is probably not the victim.
Okay.
It's probably they are doing it, to attain something else.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Sam.
Well, to me, sexual harassment means you think the other person is your slave.
Uh-huh.
That you think that whatever you want, you can have from the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, you think you are kind of in control of the situation, and you want to take advantage of the person in a more lewd or sexual ways, which are undesired, unwarranted, and unaccepted by the person.
Okay. What I'm getting here is that sexual harassment really relates to sex and any ramification that has to do with that. But we're going to probably look at a number of things in this presentation where we may actually the definition may go beyond that. But let's talk about the second question here. And I want to start with you, Dr. Sam, since you were holding the microphone. In your culture, what could count as sexual harassment in India?
Well, in India, cities are a little bit different. They are more open, and there is much tolerance there. But in village setting, and most of India is in villages, and that is sexual harassment means any kind of advancement, even a proposal, even a boy or a girl saying "I love you" to the other person is an harassment.
Okay, okay. Please explain that. You're proposing somebody in marriage, that's also sexual harassment?
Yes, because if she reports it to her parents, there is going to be violence. Even if it is the first time somebody said "I love you" to the other person, that is just unacceptable to the family, because in India, families arrange the weddings. So it is harassment. You are not expected to take initiative in a marriage proposal of love, because it is believed love starts after marriage, not before marriage.
Okay, please expand, because I can see everybody's head is aching right now. Please expand a little bit on the uniqueness of India, because I think India is very, very unique when it comes to things like this. Can you give us some more tips, because some of us are planning to travel to India one of these days?
Yes. Please keep away from the opposite sex, okay? Because it is not welcome. We have, what happens is the society is so much protective of the family that everything is decided by the family. Whether it is birth of a child or marriage or any other activity in the home is decided by the family. And therefore, any wedding has to be decided by the family, the parents, because they believe that you go by your looks. When you're looking at another person, you go by the desires, your chemistry or whatever happens to you. But that is not love. That is just infatuation sort of thing. They say we are experienced, we know what is life, we know what will make you happy, and as parents we know what is best for you. Therefore we are the right people to find a life partner for you. So you don't decide among yourself. So therefore any gesture that you say that expression of love itself is not welcomed in the society.
But if this counts as sexual harassment, Dr. Sam, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot here, India has been lately one of the countries that has so many rapes. How do you reconcile that with the protective aspect of the culture against sexual harassment? To me, it's like contradictory. Here is a family that has the values, the moral values to protect the girls to the point that even if you want to sincerely come and seek the woman for marriage, it is counted as sexual harassment. And yet, this is one of the top countries in the world with rape percentage. Yes. How do we reconcile the two?
Well, I would say it is the upbringing in the family, one of the issues. And that is, from the childhood, the girls are protected from the boys. But as you know, as the children grow up, there is a physical growth and there are hormonal changes that take place in the body. And naturally, you get attracted to the other sex. But you are not allowed to meet. And because you are not allowed to meet, you are not allowed to mingle. In fact, there are so many schools in India which are boys' schools and girls' schools. There are some co-education schools. Now government has allowed many co-education schools. But there are many, many boys' schools and girls' schools where the girls don't come close to the boys' schools and boys do not go close to the girls' schools. Segregated schools. So what happens, any little opportunity the boys get, they want to get close to girls if they find them close by. And so there are so many such happenings take place, and they want to go and propose, or they go and want to talk because of the physical being. And also it is so much so that the boy child is very much desired in the family, and they get more preferences. In the village setting it's very common. And so you find that men get preference over ladies. And education, when it comes between boy and girls education, and if you have meager means to educate them, it is the boy who is given the opportunity, not the girl. So the girl is considered as somebody who is a second class in the villages society. When those who are educated and all, they think differently. And that's why what happens is, when a boy looks at a girl, he thinks that she is, I can dominate her, because she is just the second class person in the society.
Thank you so much for helping us navigate this. Whenever we have somebody speaking from India, it's always very complex cultural issues that are not easy to deal with. And I know even within India itself, there are so many other cultures from north, west, south, and east. They are all different. Let's try Latin America, all the way to the other side of the world. What would count as sexual harassment in Argentina?
Particularly in Argentina, what counts and what doesn't count is interesting, because there are a lot of legislations. There women have a lot of power. For example, if we have some men working in a construction and there is a woman passing by, and these guys say something, an insinuation to her, and if she has some way to prove that, that is a legal issue for them. So only the sexual harassment is not a physical touch, but only a verbal insinuation is enough to have really big legal problems.
But the physical touch is also?
Is possible.
Okay.
It happens,
okay.
in fact.
But is it also considered sexual?
Absolutely,
okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
But the initial one, the lower level of harassment, is the verbal one,
wow.
and is punished by the law.
Wow. So if the verbal harassment is already punishable by the law, we can just imagine if it is a physical touch, which we're going to talk about. Okay, let's travel down to Africa. What is considered sexual harassment in Zimbabwe?
Let me perhaps put a disclaimer on that as well. Zimbabwe is big, and there are many dynamics that are involved, inclusive of the element of people who live in urban settings and people who live in the country, in the rural setting. Our urban centers have become more of global villages. It's more of what you see anywhere in the world. So perhaps I'll talk about what is perhaps typical of what is of the city, as it were, and which of course reflects itself to a great extent to those who are in urban settings. Even the city itself has areas that have different behavioral characteristics. So you really want to say, I'm zeroing on an element which is not really reflective of the whole country because of many dynamics. Now, in the rural setting, typically of city, you cannot hold the hand of a woman longer than is necessary.
And what is necessary?
You are greeting Dr. Sam here, and you say, how are you? So how is everybody? And how is mom? That can be an issue. You cannot do that. You can't even, just touch a married woman's shoulder anyhow, as you wish. That will land you into huge trouble. That can be interpreted as sexual harassment. And proximity to a woman must have defined distance. and you don't just hug people. You don't. And so it's very much characteristic of people in Zimbabwe. You don't just hug women. You meet my wife and you're just hugging her. Hi, how are you? How is Ayas? And so on. It can be something else. You don't do that. That is, it can really have serious ramifications. However, in the urban setting and in defined relationships, people can hug, yes, but it has its own way how you do it. But in the typical out there, you don't just do that. In the city, like I said, it's like you've walked into Washington, you know, and so on. So the generation there, the people, and so on is different. But this is basically, in general, that flavor in the raw setting is reflected too, even as it were in urban settings.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we're seeing some similarities and the differences between the different cultures so far. But let's come back home. Philippines, what counts as sexual harassment? What could count?
Yeah, before, you know, holding a woman's hand would really bring big trouble to men, especially, you know, when that happens, they would call on the parents, the elders, and they will have a meeting. Because, you know, the term, the woman has been disgraced. They would arrange for marriage.
Wait. Arrange the marriage with who? With
the man who had hold the hand of the woman. That was before.
But isn't that marrying the woman off to the wrong man?
Oh well, there goes the big problem there, because you know they are more into the honor.
Yes.
And you know, they the act itself maligned the family, and to preserve their honor, you know, you should you know, the man should be responsible enough to stand on his foot, and you know.
So if you've disgraced us, disgraced our daughter, we want to disgrace you and give you the girl.
Well, it's the other way around. It's like you know, you have to pay off of what you have did.
Okay.
But you see now in the Philippines, you know, it's
how is it
more
now?
westernized.
Yes.
But well, seeing you know, young people and even older people like putting their arms on the shoulder. Sometimes they would tickle. Sometimes they would, you know, these are things that would a lot of times put men into trouble. You can be easily file the complaint in the barangay for unjust vexation or malicious mischief, or for the name calling. It will be libelous.
But you talked about westernizing the culture. You said that you have become westernized. Do you think in the Western world it is okay for people to tickle people from the different gender and hold them on the shoulder without their consent? Because many times we say, well, you know, we're just following the West. But do you think that is actually acceptable in the West?
You know, the influence of television and things that they have been watched all over YouTube and everything. You know, they are young people are very receptive here, especially in the Philippines, and they would think that, you know, it's just okay to hold hands, to kiss or whatever without any having a relationship, and that really causes a big problem.
Let's look at some that come from the United Nations, the definitions of sexual harassment, and the U.S. Equal Employment Commission. And we're going to come back to this with more questions from you. Here are some manifestations of sexual harassment: actual or attempted rape or sexual assault, unwanted pressure for sexual favors, unwanted deliberate touching, leaning over, cornering or pinching, unwanted sexual looks or gestures, unwanted letters, telephone calls, or materials of sexual nature. It continues: unwanted pressure for dates, unwanted sexual teasing, jokes, remarks, or questions, referring to an adult as a girl, hung, doll, babe, or honey. And I think we are hearing a lot of these things today. Can you help me? Can you help me? Give me the next one. Whistling at someone, cat calls, and you know what this means? Sexual comments, turning work discussion to sexual topics. Let's continue. Sexual innuendos or stories. Let's continue. There's not some more here. Asking about sexual fantasies and preferences or history. Personal questions about social or sexual lives. Sexual comments about a person's clothing, anatomy, or looks. Kissing sounds, howling, and smacking lips. Telling lies or spreading rumors about a person's personal sex life. Neck massage. Yeah, I think we know, we have seen a number of these things. Touching an employee's clothing, hair, or body. Giving personal gifts. And we're not talking about just a genuine gift, but gifts that are, you just feel like you didn't expect that. It just comes, and it's coming from two different genres. Hanging around a person, hugging, kissing, patting, or stroking, touching or rubbing oneself sexually around another person, standing close or brushing up against another person. Let's try to see some more here. Looking at a person up and down, staring at someone, sexually suggestive signals, facial expressions, winking, throwing kisses or licking lips, making sexual gestures with hands or through body movements. All these count as sexual harassment. At least those are the definitions or the types, the different types that the United Nations has come up with. Let's try to address the next question. What type of sexual harassment have you seen or experienced yourself? And by the way, it's not only women who experience sexual harassment. I think if we look at this broader perspective of what we have just looked at here, the different types of sexual harassment, it's not only women who go through that. Men go through the same situation. What type have you either seen or experienced? Let's start with Edgar.
Experience.
Yes.
The last one was here in the Philippines. We were visiting some libraries over there in Manila. And yes, we had an encounter with some woman in a particular library, and she was showing a lot of, talking to me and looking at me and so on. And she offered herself to be with us when we were walking around the library. Finally, we went to an elevator. And we were not many people inside. There was enough room. But she was really pushing her body toward my body, strongly. Wow. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yeah. And I felt that was sexual harassment.
It happens. So it's not only women who are sexually harassed, men can also be harassed. And we have just seen an example from a living example here. Let's go to the next person. Have you either experienced or seen somebody sexually harassed?
In the barber shop. Oh. I had my hair cut. I wasn't aware that the barber was, should I say it? Gay. Okay. I was warned by my classmates, but they said he does the hair good. So I went there. And then, sir, the same experience. He was pressing too hard on me. And it was so uncomfortable. I was in the junior high then. You know what happened? I pushed him. I ran out with the half-done hair. And I told my uncle, and then I said, we should get back and get even. And there, we never saw him again. So that was really quite an experience. And I said, no more in the beauty salon, or you have to check with the guy who's cutting the hair. It's good we don't have that much here in Silang anyway.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And by the way, again, in this case, there was different genders, different sexes, because gender now is, everybody chooses their own gender. But in this case was different sexes, but this was the same sex, although it was still two genders. But it can definitely happen. Let's try with Dr. Sam. You haven't experienced that, have you?
Well, though I am handsome, something like this did not happen. This kind of thing did not happen to me.
All right, all right, all right. But have you seen it? Have you seen it happening?
No, I have seen something in India that a boy, tried to address a girl with love and, trying to get close to her. But then, as was mentioned, that there are laws and regulations which will take care if you. There are laws in India also. But before the law comes into picture, the relatives will come and hammer the person to such an extent he will be almost dead, and then they will take him to the
court.
Yes.
That's interesting. Let's try with Zimbabwe. Have you either seen or experienced sexual harassment?
Well, I'll take two scenarios. Number one, I think I was probably grade 6 or so. I was a little boy, but a little bit blessed with muscles, not as I look now. I've lost all the biceps and triceps have disappeared. So there was a man who used to work in the neighborhood, in the village, by the way. This is a village setting. And so we are out there, we are playing little boys, and so this grown-up boy, man, let me say, because he was working for somebody. And so he's playing with everybody there, and and so he came close to some of our little boys there, and he wanted to literally kiss these boys. And he also got close to my young brother, and he was yelling, and so I just came from nowhere, but with the strength of Samson. I delivered the boy in a dramatic way that even to this day, I don't know what happened, but he was bleeding.
That was before you were saved.
That I was saved, I think, by then. This was an act of deliverance, from Israel, needed deliverance in the form of my boy. And so, my young brother, so I just remember him bleeding. He was big, but I said, you don't touch my brother. And you don't kiss my brother. He didn't do it, and he apologized, and he ran away. But we followed him, and it was an issue, and he was expelled. Number two, it's not in Zimbabwe, but in one African country, I've seen of men abducted by women. Yes. And
I actually read an article like that. That was a story in the news that was coming out of Zimbabwe.
Yeah. Well, I didn't read the one about Zimbabwe. It's another country. I don't want to mention that one for the sake of their flag. So they, women, they are on the highway, and so they see people who want to catch a lift, beautiful car, and so they just get a man. Of all the people standing there, they get a man, and then along the way, they abuse this man, and they harvest his seed for trade, for commercial purposes. So that's not in Zimbabwe, another country I won't mention. So I've read about that.
Things are happening again. It's not only women. We're going to hear from the women in another session, but things are happening. You have addressed, both of you have addressed something happening to men, and I want to hear that from Edgar and also Dr. Sam, because you have given us some illustrations that. Can you tell us of an illustration where men are actually sexually harassed? We have heard of him in the salon, barbershop, and in his case when he had to defend his younger brother. So this is men being sexually harassed, assaulted actually. What other ways, in other ways are men sexually harassed?
Well, we saw some examples here about verbal and physical abuse from women toward men. But let me open a new door. Maybe it's not, but in my opinion, this is sexual harassment. When I am in a place and there is some woman who is dressing almost nothing, with a really tiny, tiny shirt. And she's exposing herself a lot. And she doesn't take care about her physical position and how she's behaving. I feel, personally, I feel that this is a sexual advance toward me. Maybe girls, they don't see that, but maybe they need to understand how our main works. In my feeling, in my experience, when they are dressing almost nothing and exposing themselves, this is, in my opinion, sexual harassment also.
It is, because it's sexual advances that is unwanted by men. And I think this is something that our sisters in this room will need to keep in mind. We need to dress in a decent manner. And I don't want to go on describing what is a decent manner. I think you have made a very strong point. It is possible that even here at IS, men have been sexually harassed by the way people are dressing themselves. Again, if I want to come back to what my brother said of following the Western media, do we really have to follow things that we believe is wrong? We're going to hear that in the next session when we talk to the women. Let's go back to Dr. Sam. What other ways, in other ways, are men sexually harassed?
Well, in an Indian setting, we don't hear much about this sexual harassment of men. Because as I mentioned earlier, men are considered in place, just like Pukar has said, that men are considered by women, once married, that they are in place of God. And therefore, in the society itself, you girls don't make advances really to men, because they are supposed to look down all the time.
Oh,
they are not supposed to be looking at in the urban setting it's a different thing. But in most of India is in the village setting. And therefore in villages, girls when they walk, they never look up. They are always looking down. So the harassment always comes from the other way, the men to the ladies. And ladies, they cover, they are not looking up. So we don't hear much about the sexual harassment for men as such. And even if it is happening, it is not publicized or well known around. Or maybe it just doesn't count at all. It is not, it is not considered as an assault or anything, because even if it happens, it is such mild thing, and it is not abducting or whatever that we call. Girls will not do that.
Okay.
Not.
All right, let's go to the last question because our time is almost up. How can we prevent sexual harassment from happening here at IS? How can you address it if we have seen it? In this case, we want to even expand the definition and include what Edgar was talking about. How can we address this issue here on our campus? Let's start with Pastor Guizo.
Thank you very much. This is like the church at Ephesus that we're talking about this morning. It's a cosmopolitan it's a melting pot of so many cultures. Number one, I think thumbs up. If I were the host of this program, I would say we need to give you a round of applause. Talk about it. Educate. Then we will prevent it. Because I may be very thinking that as I walk out of my home, I'm dressed, this is ideal. But I'm not home. I'm in a multicultural setting. So number two is be sensitive about where you are, in summary. So educate. Number two, be sensitive of where you are and take cognizance of the fact that this is a multicultural environment. When we begin and decide to be oblivious and see people through the lenses of our own culture, we will be surprised. Why doesn't he hug? Why doesn't he kiss in public and so on? Because I'm seeing people through the lenses of my own culture. We need to be broad and appreciate. And there are things that we can stop. They are not doctrinal. They are not part of the fundamental beliefs. It's the way we live. If you have to do away with that, while here, for the comfort of everybody here, in relationship to sexual issues, then do it, I think. And let's not minimize anybody who tries to, that's my third and last point, if somebody wants to speak out, don't minimize their cry for help.
Yes.
And number 4, know who to speak to. Not everybody here is competent, trained, professional to handle issues.
Correct.
So confide and seek help to the right people, not to a television station.
And can you tell us the right people here at IS? Who are
I
they?
think we have the Office of the Chaplain.
Correct.
And these are trained personnel.
Yes.
They've gone through how to do it.
Yes.
And the rest of us may know a few verses, and we may have read or heard about it on Google, but we are not professionals.
They're very good.
And if anybody comes your way, be humble enough to refer. Would you be comfortable, my friend, sister, if I can refer you to somebody? And sometimes somebody is harassed, they confide, it's a woman confiding in a man, they get harassed again.
Yes. And
So we need to know and be humble enough to know where to go, who is qualified, and if somebody comes to us because they are close to us, let's be humble enough to refer them to the rightful place.
And let's keep that confidential, because that is another problem that happens when you talked about being harassed the second time. When this is confided to us, let's make sure it does not go out of our own mouth. Because if you tell your spouse, if you tell your friend, now it will become the talk of the whole IS, and that does not help actually the person who is involved. 30 seconds, Dr. San.
Yes, first of all, I would say it is the upbringing of children at home. Parents make sure that you give equal opportunities and rights for a girl and a boy child.
Yes.
And help them to respect each other.
Yes.
That they must respect a girl and the girl must respect a boy.
Yes.
And that they, as they grow up, they have friends, but the friends are to be treated with respect. The respect as the sexually defined. Secondly, I would say that there are certain things that everybody should be taught to avoid, like, you know, touching the body of the person, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. All these things parents should teach their children. The elders must help children to know the limits up to where people can go.
Correct.
And beyond that it is not allowed.
Correct.
So I would say these are some of the things, in addition to what Pastor said, would be helpful.
Thank you so much. Education in the families. Let's spend time to educate our children. Anything else you want to add that they haven't mentioned? One, then we'll take one more, and then we'll close because our time is out.
Yeah, it should be among students, especially in my setting in elementary school. Children should be open with their parents. They should be honest with them. I think it's okay for parents to be inquisitive and ask the children what transpired during the day. And of course, they should take action. In our school, it's grave misconduct. And it warrants immediate suspension or expulsion. So students are oriented from the first day in school. No touching. The boys shouldn't be touching the girls. And of course, violation of such will just, come automatic. And that, because there is, I'd like to add a little. If you happen, foreigners here in the Philippines, there is this abused word, sexy. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
Even the women are greeting,
personally sexually harassed with
sexy.
that in many places where I go.
You're
And
sexy
I just
today,
feel
right?
so uncomfortable when somebody says that.
Yes. And women would just greet around. Haven't you noticed that? You're sexy. And then they would be wearing short shorts. You're very sexy. And even short and very, very, that superlative thing. And they think it's comfortable. It's more of a compliment than So, well, it's again goes down to the parents how they bring their children. Dressing up a baby or a small girl, and then you call it sexy. All right. So that's it. For our parents, it's just okay to ask the children what really transpired in school, and then they should have the courage, because justice delayed is justice denied.
Correct. Thank you so much for raising that specific aspect. Let's hear the final comment.
Talking about prevention here at IS, we have a particular culture here. I need to confess I did it. I was a perpetrator. You know, I am from the Latina culture. We kiss, we hug, we touch. From the very beginning, even though if we don't know that person. So I did it. When that woman told me that really good news, I was moving toward her, and I saw her moving toward back, 2 steps back. So I understood, no, she's really feeling uncomfortable. So we need to understand that this behavior is about selfishness. So we need to move from ourselves, from our culture, to understand others and different cultures, to prevent, to avoid this behavior.
Thank you so much. We want to thank you all here in the studio and those who are watching. Thank you for being with us today. And if you have questions or opinions and comments that you want to communicate with us, please email us at united@ias.edu. Again, the email address is united@ias.edu. Until we meet again, we want to encourage you to be united in diversity.